to sign in, you would actually get a dashboard like this. You would get a login page. And so you just click on forgot password and update your password for those of you who are new users. If you are an existing user, then just simply sign in. And then, so yeah, you'll have access to the portal of political science. If you are part of the GS ecosystem, just go back to the store and then click on the second part and you would have access to this as well. So yeah, that will be all.
Okay, perfect. So we'll watch a video and that's how we'll start today's class. Okay, so let's watch a video. By the way, this is a very interesting video, captured in a very interesting time. And as and when we proceed with our journey of pol science, I think it's imperative that I don't just cover philosophers. I also keep on tying those philosophies with what's happening globally, what's happening nationally, because that is what will make you remarkable with your answers. You have to keep on thinking cross-functionally, and that's how you will learn and remember things. So let's watch a video and let me know your thoughts.
When President Amin finally appeared, he asked his guest to join him in a buffet lunch. By inviting everyone together in the presence of the press, he'd effectively denied any single envoy or Asian spokesman the opportunity to influence his decision. His mind was made up, his statement already in his pocket. Those who'd come hoping to negotiate found themselves merely an audience. It was clear that the president was standing firm on his decision to expel as many Asians as possible. With the exception of professional men, technicians and civil servants, not only British Asians, but those of Indian and Pakistani nationality would have to go too. And even those who claim to be Ugandan citizens would have to prove it all over again if they were to stay. The president denied that his decision was either racialist or anti-British. The mass expulsion was purely in the interests of Uganda's economy.
Actually, I took this decision for the economy of Uganda. And I must make sure that every Ugandans get a fruit of independence. Since independent, actually Uganda is not yet independent, I will say that, even when the British handed over on the 9th of October 1962, the Uganda still not yet independent. Uganda will be independent after this, my decision, after I want to see that the whole Kampala street is not full of Indians. It must be proper black, and administration in those shops is run by the Ugandans.
Would you like to get all Asians out, really, sir?
Yes, they must go to their country.
Even nationals of Uganda?
If they want to go, they are welcome to go.
What will happen to these people if they don't go by the time limit?
I think they will be sitting like they are sitting on the fire. I will tell you this. You just wait after 3 months.
What will you do to them?
Okay, you will see.
You said you wanted Uganda.
I think they will not sit comfortably here in Uganda. I will tell you this. I must actually tell you the truth.
Have you asked the British to take them away, sir?
Okay. Vimal, your thoughts, your observations.
Hi, sir. Good evening, sir. My thoughts on the video, as you said, already the point was mentioned that it is similar to Hotel Rwanda movie. Based on you said that connected to the.
I think he's not audible to me. Sumal, let's start with you.
Good evening, sir. So,
This video was.
Yeah, go on.
I recall the movie Invictus. If Nelson Mandela would not have intervened, and this would be the same case in South Africa. The white and black blacks wanted that white should leave the country. And in present scenario, I recall this Agenda 25, which is in news these days regarding the US election, that all the pro-Trump should be in the administrative things. And plus, in recent times, like Europe, there is right-leaning parties. Every country is looking inward. Somewhere they are heading towards this.
Okay.
Not particularly, but yes.
Okay. Anyone knows the context of what was happening in Uganda around that time? Himanshu?
Hello, sir. Good evening. Sir, going by the video, I think there would have been an established regime and there would have been an coup organized by the general shown in the video. So
Idi
the
Amin.
yes,
Yes.
sir.
Very
So
famous
he would have
personality.
arranged the coup and got the power. So after that, the same thing that Hitler did, or whatever we are seeing in Manipur, that one tribe thinks that they have major
Okay.
access and they have the right to access those resources.
Okay. Good. So yesterday, we began the journey of this beautiful subject. And that journey, in a way, began by a very interesting question. Why is it even relevant to study political science? You know, why study philosophy? The philosophers. See, of course, in our journey to understand political science, we will talk about the idea of justice, idea of best regime. We will continue to ask ourselves, who is the ideal statesman? Is it Idi Amin that you just saw in front of your screens today? Or is it Robert Mugabe, who you did not see yesterday, I think, but we spoke about him? Or is it Lee Kuan Yew, who transformed the fate of Singapore? But he did that with many caveats. In days and months to come, as we refine and build onto our foundations, we will develop perspectives. Okay. And those perspectives will not be just on politics. It cannot be just on politics. Those perspectives will not be just in philosophy or geopolitics. In our study to decipher this beautiful discipline, we have to integrate the insights on economy, insights on sociology, insights on law. Why? Because at the end of the day, I am of the view that political science is the science of statecraft. Political science will cover the art and science of governing a state. A very important statement. And in a way, this statement brings forth a huge responsibility for me. So of course, my responsibility does not just end with you getting 300 plus in your optional subject. Getting that score is just a beginning. My responsibility is that I'm accountable not just to you, but to every citizen of my country. Why? Because 100 people who are in this Zoom room and a few hundred who may watch the recording, they're training to be India's future statesmen. And it is my responsibility that they understand the art and science of statecraft that we will decipher in time to come. And it would be a personal shame for me if those statesmen of my country, if they behave like Mugabe or Hitler, or the ones who should not be named, just because they want to acquire power. These people, they divided people on the names of religion, language, color, caste, and whatever they could find. Why? So that they can remain in power, they can justify their power, their rule. Idi Amin, the man you saw in the video, who was he? He is one person who single-handedly destroyed Uganda. In 1972, he expelled almost 100,000 Asians from Uganda. And with that expulsion, with that politics of hate and color, began the legacy of human rights abuses in Uganda. Not just that, economy crumbled, foreign policy crumbled, and Uganda became a living hell. And these living hells will be created throughout the world across ages. From Germany to Italy to Burkina Faso to Uganda. And who knows, possibly India in time to come. And the person at the helm, the statesman, will have a huge responsibility to play. So to my future statesmen, yesterday we began the story of political science by asking the oldest question in this discipline. Who is a statesman? No? So today we'll continue that discussion as we debate, analyze the works of philosophers. Philosophers whose writings are relevant even hundreds of years after they were penned. See how relevant they are. Studying them today. Be it Chanakya, be it the Plato. So Chanakya can wait for now. Our journey will begin with Plato. There's a very interesting British philosopher, Alfred North Whitehead. He said something very interesting. He said that political philosophy is nothing but a series of footnotes to Plato. Why did he say that? Why would he say that? It is totally fine if you have no answers, but build a conjecture. Why could that be the reason? Alfred North Whitehead, he said that political philosophy is nothing but series of footnotes to Plato. That's a very bold statement. Roger?
Yeah, hi Naman. Hi everyone. What I think there can be two reasons. While I'm very convinced to go believe in the first one, which is that when he must have read, because it's his opinion, when he must have read Plato's works and when he must have formed the looked at the works after Plato, he might have found the evidence of his philosophy or his way of thinking and his way of analyzing in the works of his successors. So, and I can combine the second reason in the statement only, that it might be the earliest recollection or the earliest found philosophy during that time. So this might be the reason for the same.
Okay. Myra, your thoughts? And Myra, what happened this time in prelims?
Sir, I told you, yeah, like last time also, I don't know, like I was hoping that I would go through, but I don't know.
Okay, let's hope for the best this time around.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Answering the question, like when we write a research paper, so we put a footnote in the end. So footnote is like from where we derived our whatever thesis or whatever works we are putting it through. So when he said this statement, he meant that whatever Western political philosophy that we study, a lot of work has been provided by Plato, and whatever further we derive on it, it's because we have so much that he has given us through to build upon. So that is what I can think of.
Okay. See, one of the seminal works of Plato is, it's a book called Republic. You don't have to read it. Good for you, otherwise you will never be able to wrap up the syllabus. But you have to talk about this book as if you have read it in the examination. For any philosophy student, it's the Gita, Quran, Bible But that book, in a way, provides for marvelous piece of wisdom hundreds of years ago. Republic addresses fundamental questions about justice, governance, ideal state, the ideal statesman. It was this republic that had set the stage for subsequent philosophical inquiries. But to understand Plato and his very interesting idea of philosopher king, you need to go back in time. And you need to understand the context when he gave this idea. But why should we go back in time and understand the context first? Even to understand Plato and the book that he writes, Republic is one of the books. For whatever ideas that he may give, why should I look at the context of that time? Why am I not just giving you what he said? What could be the reason? It's easier for me to tell you, this is what he said. Learn, cram. But I want you to imagine those days when he was building onto his ideas. Shravanti?
Yeah, so anything is contextual because we can take the example of French Revolution. Maybe from there the context of being republic and away from the monarchy and those principles of equality and freedom have come. So that's why context plays an important role.
And it is not just Plato. No philosopher writes in a vacuum. How can they write in a vacuum? How can they? In fact, whatever thoughts that you may have today, aren't those thoughts deeply influenced by whatever is happening around you? Kamalpreet, were there any talks about remote work in 2015?
Sir, no.
Yeah, you're audible.
Yes, sir, no, sir. During 2015, there were no remote work.
Yeah, there were remote works happening, but not the way we see today. 2010, no. 2015, no. Why? Because there was no COVID pandemic. COVID-19 in 2020, what did it do? It forced many businesses to adapt to lockdowns. They had to adapt. A friend of mine, he recently became a partner in McKinsey's New York office. He told me, Naman, what I can achieve over 15 minutes Zoom call today, back in the days, it used to take 12 hours because our culture was such. Today, he can do a Zoom meeting. But back in the day, as a consultant, he had to be physically present in front of the client. But with pandemic, things changed. Remote work, virtual meetings, they became the norm, not the exception. But before that, those were the exceptions. What does it show? It shows our thoughts, our ideas, they're deeply influenced by events around us, circumstances around us. Just a few months ago, civil servants used to take pride in showcasing their power on Instagram, YouTube. How can we forget the royal entry exit videos? Just one fraud. All those civil servants did what? Deactivated their Instagram, deleted their Twitter. Events around us, circumstances around us, they will shape our thoughts. They will shape our ideas. What is the reason? Why was Ambedkar ji, why was he so vocal about affirmative action policies? What's the reason? Do you all understand what are affirmative action policies? What is affirmative action? Just 3 people know this. Affirmative action. No one else. Renuka?
Good evening, sir. One of the best example we can say in case of affirmative actions is reservation in our system. And these are the actions which are done to balance the situation, who are deprived to provide them the platform. It's not like we are giving someone as part to them, but we are providing the level so that they can be equal and get equal opportunities.
Okay, good. In simple words, affirmative action refers to policies, practices that may correct the effects of past discrimination, social injustices, setting aside a certain percentage of seats for specific groups for whatever reasons. One of the mechanisms to ensure affirmative action. My question is, why was Ambedkar ji so vocal about it? Why is Bill Gates not so vocal about caste census? The answer perhaps lie in how Ambedkar ji grew up. He himself was born into a Dalit family. He himself experienced first-hand severe discrimination, social exclusion. So no philosopher can write in vacuum. Philosophical ideas are deeply influenced by historical, social, cultural contexts in which they are developed. You cannot understand a philosopher if you do not understand the context in which that specific philosopher gave his or her ideas, or philosophies, or thoughts. Today, you may go on to just cram a few sentences, few lines from certain books. But those are meaningless if you do not understand the context in which those sentences and those lines were written. So when Plato was building his ideas and thoughts, what was the context? Anyone knows the context? What was happening? Who was in power, Congress or BJP? Janani?
Good evening, sir. So when Plato was basically the student of Socrates, so he had a profound impact of Socrates' teaching in his thought process. Also, when during their time in Athens, the church had immense power, and I'm not sure, but yeah. So the amount of irrationality that people carried in their minds is something that Plato wanted to dispel and bring them the importance of having a rational ruler, is what I think, sir.
Okay. Rafi, your thoughts?
There were two states in Greece that time. One was Athens and another was Sparta. So
There were many other.
Athens had.
There were many other city-states.
Yes.
Not just these two.
Athens had lost to Sparta in a war known as Peloponnesian War, and Athens was in a pretty bad shape as compared to the other republics or states at that time. So, seeing all this, Plato, as we say in political science, that every philosopher is a child of his time. So, seeing the state of Athens, Plato was not very happy with it, as it was ruled by a tradition of scholars called sophists, who believed in a particular way which Plato thought was not great for the Athens.
Not just philosopher, every politician, Every businessman, they're all child of their time. No. Yeah, revolution would have made no sense in 16th century. The context is important in which Plato may write his thoughts. That was a time of political turmoil in ancient Greece. Rafi mentioned a war called Peloponnesian War. What was that? Peloponnesian. Peloponnesian. What was that? It was a destructive conflict fought between two major Greek city-states, Athens and Sparta. My question is, what are these city-states? What does it mean, city-states? The city-states, they were primarily political units of ancient Greece. The city-states were distinct. They were self-governing entities in a way. They consisted of a city and a surrounding territory. In a way, we can say that these city-states perhaps functioned as an independent country with its own government, own sets of laws, military customs. Today, we do not have this concept of city-state. Why? Or do we have it? Of course, some can argue Singapore or Monaco, but we can argue against that also. But why we don't have this concept of city-states? What changed? When did it change? Aman?
So these days we have nation states.
Yeah.
And it changed after whatever it is after the Treaty of Westphalia.
Yeah, good point. Today, we do not have this concept of city-states. The Peace of Westphalia in 1648, it changed that. I'll talk about Westphalia in international politics. I may talk about it when we discuss another philosopher in time to come. The Peace of Westphalia, it changed this. Today, we have nation states. Nation states are typically larger than city-states. These nation states will have reduced autonomy or give reduced autonomy to individual cities. Central authority gains the power. Today, many regions that were collection of city-states, they have been unified into a larger nation state. But why? Why would that happen? Because that is how you will reduce internal conflicts. Simple. Otherwise, all city-states around you will vie for control, for influence. Not just that, unification of city-states into nation-states, it allows for more efficient management. What do you think? It will allow for distribution of resources across larger area. And basic economics will tell us it is also linked to productivity. Economies of scale, better resource allocation, industrial development. We all know the story of Germany. What happened there? How did it become the nation state? Before its unification, in 1871, what was Germany? There was none. It was composed of independent states. But then a man called Otto von Bismarck, he brought these states together under the German Empire, and that unified Germany. With that unification, there was rapid industrialization. In over a few years of time, this unified Germany, it became one of the largest, I would say one of the leading industrial powers of 20th century. The reason is simple, because a unified state could better manage resources, be it coal or iron. Of course, this is political unification. Unification is also psychological. Political unification does not always mean that the entity is united. But yes, unified nation states, that concept emerged after the Peace of Westphalia. And it's not just Germany. Can you think of other independent states and kingdoms who united later? Italian unification, 1861. No? How can we forget America? How did US begin? United States of America. What was it? It began as a colony of what? 13 colonies? Collection of 13 colonies. Those 13 colonies, they declared their independence from Britain. And over time, US became a mighty powerhouse. So if we travel back in time to ancient Greece, it was not a nation state the way we see today. Today, of course, Greece has beautiful islands, Corfu, Crete, Rhodes. They're part of a very specific nation state. But back in the days, the same Greece, it consisted of various city-states: Athens, Sparta, Corinth, Argos, Megara, Rhodes. I can go on and on. But for all these city-states, Athens and Sparta, they became important. Why? Because they were unique, distinct, different. Most importantly, they were rivals. And these rivals will fight a very interesting war in Peloponnese. This devastating war will have a profound impact on the society in Athens. It will impact the intellectual life of Athens. And very interestingly, this war will expose the weakness of Athenian democracy. Wars always lead to political instability. It leads to inconsistent policies in many cases. And all of those things happened in the Athens of those days. There was factionalism within Athens. And that's the story with every kind of war. Can we say war is good for the economy? Kamalpreet, can we say war is good for the economy?
No, sir.
No? Telling what do you think?
No, sir. I don't think war is good.
See, war is never good for the economy until you are what? Participating or not participating in it. It depends upon who you ask. Today, the war is happening in Ukraine, Palestine, Africa. If I were to go and ask American, do you think war is good for the economy? They would say, we'd love it. Why? Because they're not fighting those wars. They're economically benefiting from those wars. They're selling military equipments to those engaged in war. Whenever there is a war, why do stocks of Lockheed Martin or Raytheon, why do they see the rise? These are American companies, defense contractors. They secure lucrative government contracts. And during the wars, governments usually enhance their spending. On what? In acquiring these equipments, fighter jets. During the war, government will not spend money on education or culture or art. They would spend money on weapons. And that is why America seems to be the biggest beneficiary with wars in Europe. And it is not just weapons. US has increased its LNG exports to Europe ever since the Ukraine conflict. American LNG exports to Europe, they have tremendously increased. Before the war, Europe relied on cheap Russian imports. And today, US benefits from whatever is happening in Ukraine. They benefit from the agony. But for those who are engaged in war, Ukraine, what about them? They are directly involved in war. Millions of Ukrainians today, they have been displaced. Ukraine was one of the major grain producer, grain exporter. Look at its agricultural output today, down the drains. Whereas US, on the other hand, benefiting immensely from the agony. So hundreds of years ago, the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta, it profoundly impacted the economics and politics of Athens. Unlike the Americans, Athens this time around was engaged directly in the war. The Peloponnesian War, it exposed a weakness of Athenian democracy. And in that scenario, Plato was first-hand witnessing the rise of demagogues in Athens. Not just that, amidst the war, political environment became highly polarized, became unpredictable. Leaders were often changed. In front of his eyes, the mighty Athens, the cradle of civilization, was getting destroyed. But the event that truly broke Plato was the execution of Socrates. A trial of Socrates, a famous trial of Socrates. Who was Socrates? I'm setting the context. Don't worry about notes at this stage. Whatever is important for examination, I'll tell you. But you need to understand the context. Otherwise, you won't remember those things. Yokita?
So Plato was a disciple of Socrates, and I think he was the first one who gave the theory of dialectical theory. I'm not sure, but yeah.
Muthuraman, your thoughts?
Sir, Socrates was actually a teacher of Plato, and he was executed. While he was executed, I think Socrates accepted the execution order and then he complied to it.
Did Socrates write any book?
Not sure, sir.
Anyone? Any thoughts? Did he author any book? Any student of political science? Labdhi, your thoughts?
No, sir. So Socrates did not write in anything, but the Plato, after the death of Socrates, he wrote a book about what Socrates used to say about wisdom.
Okay. So, of course, Socrates, the classical Greek philosopher. And by the way, whenever you are in Greece, Athens or anywhere, it's, in fact, I was telling this to a friend of mine also, that you sit in a dinner table and you're calling, names like what? Dionysius, Socrates passed the salt, Plato. Those are names of the people. But anyway, Socrates, he was a classical Greek philosopher who was credited as one of the founders of Western philosophy. His ideas, his methods, they have been preserved through the writings of his students. And most notable of those students is Plato. Plato was one of Socrates' most famous student. The relationship between Socrates and Plato was that of a mentor and a disciple. And whether we agree or disagree, but fact of the matter is Plato's philosophical ideas, they were significantly influenced by Socrates. It was a trial and execution of Socrates that had profound impact on Plato. Why? Why would that happen? Myra?
So as far as I remember, Socrates was charged with sedition at that time. So he was like, he tried to influence people to think.
Sedition was in vogue back in the days.
So like in terms of current definition, he invoked, like he was charged with sedition. So he wanted people to think, youngsters to think and not just follow what were given, like what were ordered to them. So in order to like stick on to his philosophy, I think one of his friend, I forgot the name, he asked him to flee away, but he said, no, if I just flee away, then the whole like philosophy which he based on would matter. So he died by drinking a poison. I think it was some.
Do you know what's happening in Bangladesh these days? Why is that happening?
I think there's some crisis going on. I don't know the depths of it.
But Sheikh Hasina's government is also blaming the microfinance god. What's his name? Studied economics, no? Gargi?
Sir, I think Muhammad Yunus.
So what's happening there?
Sir, I think students are protesting against the reservation policy of the government.
Mm-hmm. And those who are protesting, they are called as Razakars. A condescending term. A Nobel laureate is being accused of money laundering around the same time. You stumble upon these cases of money laundering and not in what else? The ED raids. It's not as simple as it looks. These are tools used by the governments, the leadership, to curtail certain voices. The trial of Socrates, it exposed how public opinion in a democratic system, how it could be manipulated by demagogues. That is what Plato saw. Who is a demagogue? Demagogue is a political leader who seeks support by appealing to popular desires, popular emotions. A demagogue is someone who often exploits social divisions. He exploits the fear, the anger to gain and maintain power. A demagogue in the name of Hitler blamed Jews for Germany's economic woes. Jews became the scapegoat to unite and mobilize German population against a common enemy. Ironically, that enemy became one specific religious minority. In Uganda, that minority was based as the skin color, the browns, the Asians. Hitler did not give the rhetoric of Mandir Masjid Mutton. But yes, these demagogues always have some rhetoric. They portray themselves as self-made. They usually have humble beginning. Look at anyone, any of the demagogues. They all have humble beginning. Or if it's a manufactured story. Because that is how they contrast themselves from a dynastic family. For these demagogues, whosoever disagrees with their viewpoints and ideas, they are portrayed as anti-national. They use the state machinery to harass and silence the dissenters. I'm not telling anyone's name. The state machinery could be in the form of anything. ED, CBI, in today's case, or back when Congress was in power. In the days of Hitler, it was not ED or CBI, it was what? Gestapo. It was a secret state police of Nazi Germany. Eliminated political opponents and dissenters. These demagogues, they cultivate a cult of personality, present themselves as God, perhaps the ultimate authority. Their images are present everywhere, from public spaces to public parks to media to every COVID vaccine certification. Modi ji does not have it anymore on those certificates. He used to have it. So hundreds of years ago, the trial of Socrates, it exposed how public opinion in a democratic system, how it could be manipulated by demagogues. It is true also. Public. I think in Hindi there is a saying, public hai sab janti hai. I tend to disagree. Public knows everything. No, they don't. The trial of Socrates in what? 399 before Common Era. It was one of the most famous legal proceedings in history. What was the charge against Socrates? What did he do? Sumail? Can't hear you.
Sorry, am I audible?
Yes.
So he was influencing the youth. He was talking about sophists who were educators, who were teaching because how to get in power. The rich used to pay them and they used to teach them how to get in power by using vocal skills, gaining all the public opinion and all.
Okay. I will not go into the specifics, but in a way he was accused of corrupting the young men of Athens. Why? Because he encouraged them to question authority and traditional beliefs. In a way, Socrates was encouraging critical thinking. And in an Athens led by a demagogue, it was perceived as a threat to the established norms and power structures. Demagogues are always worried about this. Socrates was charged for impiety. Impiety. He questioned the traditional views on God. He did not deny the existence of God, but he did question the traditional views on God. Those who accused Socrates, they used emotional appeals, rhetorics, to sway the jury. I think there were many influential Athenians, Anytus was one of them. Don't worry about the name. They had personal and political reason to oppose Socrates. So they turned the trial into a political tool. They didn't care about justice. So it was the time when Athens had suffered a devastating defeat in the Peloponnesian War. It was a time of instability and social unrest. And in those scenarios, there's always a desire to find a scapegoat. Does that happen? Finding a scapegoat? Can you think of example? Any recent one? Shubhra?
In the recent mishap that has happened in the old Rajendra Nagar leading to death of 3 students, they have arrested the driver of the vehicle that was passing by on the road. Like, what is the driver of a vehicle supposed to do if the road is submerged in water? Like, do we fly in the sky or what? I mean, how is he responsible for any of this?
Very interesting. I think DCP, Harshvardhan or something, he arrested the driver of an SUV. And these jokers are in charge of public law and order in India. That's a distraction. How can you arrest someone whose crime is to drive on a road for which he has paid hefty taxes? And that person is driving a vehicle for which paid the road tax, toll tax, GST, whatnot. I think that IPS should be arrested first for torturing the people of India in the garb of a uniform. No question on the Public Welfare Department. Almost a month ago, official complaint was made against these illegally run libraries or institutes. Things never change. Finding a scapegoat. But yes, Athens has recently suffered a devastating defeat in the Peloponnesian War. And that defeat, it led to political instability, massive social unrest. And in that scenario, you have to find a scapegoat. Someone who could be blamed for city's misfortunes. And intellectuals are the scapegoat. In this case, that intellectual was Socrates. Why? Because they are perhaps the easy targets. It was this trial of Socrates that exemplified how a democratic system, how it could devolve into a mob rule. A rule where decisions were made based on popular sentiments. A rule where decisions were not made based on rational debate or justice. And if you were an intellectual around that time, you will be affected by this. What's happening? The way you are already affected with what's happening in old Rajendra Nagar. Instead of arresting those officials who took the bribe, you're arresting the driver. But sadly, intellectuals like you are not many. Some might cheer for it. At least someone is jailed. But Plato was affected by that trial. So do you think Plato will be in favor of democracies? Or will he criticize democracies? What will be his views on the majority? Would you think of them as ignorant or knowledgeable? It is just context that will help you answer some of these questions, to learn these things. So your thoughts? Plato be in favor of establishing democracies? Rajashri?
Yes, sir. So Plato will definitely despise democracy just because of this mob rule that was initially considered as a democratic rule, turning into a mob rule, and that led to the execution of Socrates, that who was his mentor, his educator. So definitely he won't be in favor of democracy in any sense.
Yeah, he will be very critical of democracies. Plato will argue that it allows for the rule of ignorant majority rather than the knowledgeable few. So what will he suggest? He will respond with an idea. He will propose a vision of an ideal state. And what will be that ideal state? A state governed by a rational and just leader. Plato will seek a system in which the pursuit of truth, pursuit of virtue, it will not be punished. Rather, the pursuit of truth, pursuit of virtue, those pursuits will be upheld as the highest value. And with this context in mind, Plato will give the concept of philosopher king. For Plato, either philosopher should be the king or kings should learn philosophy. But why is he giving this idea? Of course, we all know this story. This is the context. But is this really true? Is there any self-interest for Plato in promoting this idea? When Modi ji talks about Hindus are in danger, he has a self-interest. BJP, by its very virtue, will remain in power as long as Hindus are united. It's no secret. If you divide Hindus basis caste, perhaps Rahul Gandhi ji would want to achieve that. BJP will lose its vote bank because those castes will not vote as a unified entity. And whenever that happens, BJP will lose. That's how they lost in UP. If you were to ever analyze India's elections, there is always one very interesting conclusion. If Hindus vote based on caste identities, BJP will lose. In fact, in the politics of India, there is a very interesting phenomenon, Mandal Kamandal. We'll keep on talking about these episodes. It all ties down with your syllabus of pol science also. What is that, Mandal Kamandal? The politics of Mandal Kamandal. It represents two major and two contrasting political strategies. Politics of Mandal, it focuses on caste-based affirmative actions. Politics of Kamandal focuses on religious mobilization. Can anyone give me an example? These strategies work together. To all those who have studied polity under my helm, they would know the answers, but I'm looking for someone new. Divyansh?
Sir, it is about the Mandal Kamandal thing, or why Plato had the skin in establishing
Kamandal.
philosopher king.
Mandal Kamandal.
So Mandal Kamandal, when the Mandal Commission came, so it led to the very stratified and diversified political parties emerging as in the states and the center. So the emerging opposition, which was BJP, it saw that its stakes are getting low, so they united in the cause for Ram Janmabhoomi.
Hold on.
Which
going in all the right directions. But for some context, why call it the Mandal politics to begin with? Why call it the Mandal politics? Because in 1979, Government of India established something called the Mandal Commission, a commission to identify socially, educationally backward classes. Commission submitted a report in the 80s, and certain percentage of reservation was one of the recommendations. But that report was not implemented immediately. Prime ministers had to change. After a few years later, former Prime Minister VP Singh, when he gained prominence in 1990s, he used this report. And with that began the politics of Mandal. The core of Mandal politics is what? Implementation of affirmative action policies for the OBCs. If you were Lal Krishna Advani or Atal Bihari Vajpayee around that time, what will you think? You may think VP Singh just delivered a masterstroke. My vote bank is Hindu. Now they're all divided basis caste. If you are Lal Krishna Advani, you're seeing Mandal politics has divided your vote. In first pause opposed system that we have in India, that is concerning. And as a response, what will you do? You will have to mobilize the Hindu voters. As Lal Krishna Advani, you will have to then bring forth the politics of Hindutva. And how can that happen? Ram Janma Bhumi movement. Anyone who disagrees with Advani ji? From political standpoint, let's not talk about ethics. Some may say it's a masterstroke. A movement aimed to build a temple, that too at a disputed site. A place believed to be the birthplace of Lord Ram. And very interestingly, the same site is also home to Babri Masjid, a mosque built in 16th century. So it will always be in the interest of BJP to pursue its politics of Kamandal. Because if they do not do so, Rahul Gandhi ji will win with his caste-based politics. Demand for caste census by Rahul Gandhi ji is nothing but a newer version of Mandal politics. Because this call for caste census can mobilize support from various castes within Hindu fold. Will galvanize those castes. And that's how you will challenge the Hindu unity. But whatever the case is, in this politics of Mandal Kamandal, who will lose? India. Why? Because this is how you will entrench caste identities forever for perpetuity. And at the same time, because there will be reactions to it, you will also keep on alienating minorities in the same country. Because parties have to come to power. So for India to thrive, it is very, very critical, essential. We find a balance that promotes inclusive growth, inclusive development, national unity, equitable opportunities. More than the talk shops of caste, mandir, masjid. People of India should demand jobs. They should demand better wages, better living standards, better hospitals, better education. But here we keep on fighting for those limited jobs. Why not have a scenario where you increase the pie? So Modi ji has a reason to pursue agenda of Hindutva. He has political compulsions. But what is the reason for Plato? Why is he pushing forward the agenda of philosopher king? Why is he arguing that best rulers are philosopher kings? Shubham?
Yeah, so I agree. Maybe, sir, I mean, he being a great thinker, he may have a vision for the future for it, for peace. I guess that is why he's basically thinking about on those lines. That maybe like we have seen in history as well, that
Okay.
a king basically, yeah, like that.
Anandita, after you.
So because they are rational and more wiser, I think, according to
Philosopher
Plato.
kings are more wiser. Can you think of any philosopher king?
Not really, so.
Is Ayatollah Khomeini a philosopher king in Iran?
No.
We'll come to Iran. If the question comes in UPSC, that philosopher ruler was a linchpin of Plato's ideal state, comment. What will you write? And please note, a question on philosopher king is what I expect if there were to be a question from Plato. Like 4 or 5 questions that are always asked. If I ask you to write a question, write this question. Philosopher ruler was the linchpin of Plato's ideal state. Full stop, comment, full stop. So this is one question that you should put on your blog and you should keep on editing it or whatever notes that you're making. You will write that Plato's concept of philosopher ruler, it is central to his vision of the ideal state as articulated in his seminal work, The Republic. Why am I writing this statement as articulated in this seminal work, The Republic? Many people will forget this. Because in your UPSC answers, what matters the most is that you're able to fool the examiner into believing that you are not just aware about the general things of Plato's philosophy, but you're also aware of the primary source of his ideas. So when you cite Republic, it shows what? It shows that you know the primary sources of Plato's ideas. It demonstrates a deeper level of study from your end. When you reference a seminal work, it lends credibility to your answers. Not just for this answer, you do this multiple times for various answers. It shows that your arguments are backed by authority. In optional subject, that is one of the ways to get extra marks. We have to source many authors, many books. Even if we wish to criticize an argument, we have to source the names of those critiques. Realistically, it is impossible to read through all those books. So you have to build a framework, keep on learning. More than the students of Pol Science who've done their MAs and the BAs, engineers and doctors, they score the most in this subject because they engineer their answers the way they have been doing in their undergrad. So having a knowledge is one thing, but how do you convey that knowledge in an answer in just 7 to 10 minutes? That's the hallmark of a misfitter. That's how you will get a good rank, good score. UPSC exam, especially in these arts subjects, they appreciate scholarly approach. So let's engineer that approach. So you have to reference these seminal works. In fact, examiners, I can tell you with full confidence, these examiners, when they're checking your copies, they often look for such specific references to check how well prepared the candidate is. To showcase that you've gone beyond the surface level understanding. It's a different story if you've done this or not. But at least you have to fool the examiner into believing that you've done it. Eventually, if you crack the examination, that's what we're preparing for. Of course, many ancillary benefits will be there, but you have to score the highest. So I will not lie to you. My approach of teaching would be very exam centric. I have to ensure that you score the highest in pol science. And the module that we develop in time to come should perhaps be the best module in the history of this subject. So teaching style has to be exam centric. Otherwise, it may take 3 years to complete the syllabus. Not worth it. It may take 1 year to revise the syllabus. Not worth it. So let's come back to the question that you could be asked in the examination. The question was, philosopher ruler was the linchpin of Plato's ideal state comment. You will write Plato's concept of philosopher ruler is central to his vision of the ideal state, as articulated in his seminal work, The Republic. Underline. The philosopher ruler or philosopher king is depicted as a cornerstone of Plato's political philosophy. It is this philosopher king who serves as the embodiment of wisdom, justice, and rational governance. And that is exactly what we will analyze and debate in the next class. Today, I had to set the context. So the next class is scheduled for tomorrow, same time. But any observations, any views up until now? Sumal?
So when I have studied political science in my BA. So when I used to study it, I was thinking that there's a concept like dialects, that it's a teaching method. I used to think how beautiful it would be if a teacher teaches like that. I am witnessing that in your class, so thank you for that. And the observations, when you were asking for a scapegoat, I was able to recall Imran Khan, the PM of Pakistan, because he was trying to do something right. I think he was trying to, even to gain power, he was trying to inspire student to do critical thinking, what's wrong with the government and all. So that's what my observation was.
Thank you for your kind words, Sumal. Which school did you study? I think you're on mute, but that's fine. Soumya, go on.
Something that I wanted to go back to was when you were discussing Uganda. Can we look at it in terms of plain citizenship and how, in a country we look at, even in the modern day context, there is citizenship being granted, and then you have to prove it if you're, the priority of having a citizenship of a particular country, and when it's linked to like economic crisis. Certain newer editions might be the first ones to bear the brunt of it. So just like wanted to say it.
I don't think it's just the newer editions. These are usually the weaker editions. Those who are weak, they become the easy scapegoat. Labdhi?
So I have a question perhaps. So shall I go, sir?
Voice is cracking. Can you fix the internet?
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, let's start with the question. If I can comprehend, I'll address it.
Okay. Okay, so in GS module, we have post-it. So is there any post-it for optional as well? Do we have to do anything or read something about Plato or anything like that?
So one thing that I want to say out loud is, if you were to read things on your own for pol science, the list is going to be endless. My advice would be rely entirely on misfits. I will tell you what all you should read. For every philosopher, there are 4 or 5 answers that you have to cram. Cramming those answers will be easy because I'll set the context beautifully well. Minimize the notes, minimize the sources, minimize the resources. I will do all the work for you. I will go through all the standard books, specific material, and I will pick the best parts of those things. My job is to ensure that I simplify things for you. Don't want to overcomplicate things for you. So no post reads. In some of the classes there could be, but I'll tell you what to read. Of course, you're free to read through any of the sources, resources. But my idea is if you can rely entirely on misfits, you should be through with a good score. As long as you're learning whatever we are speaking or saying in this class, and then revising those answers multiple times. UPSC examiners, they play eeny meeny poo in the examination of all science. You can see yourself repeating similar kinds of questions all the time. Eventually, you then have to interconnect dots, and you can't rely on one specific coaching notes for it. Otherwise, what's your distinction? So whatever we do at Misfits, that's the bare minimum. You have to revise, re-revise. And keep on connecting the dots that you see in your world around. Dhanashri?
Sir, I have a doubt.
Go.
Should we focus any part of newspaper or current affairs for PSIR?
No, I think newspaper reading should be exactly the way I've told you for GS. Newspapers are used to pick up certain elements to it. For IR, I will be referring to few other sources, and I will talk about those things in the classes. So keep it simple. Rely entirely on whatever you've been doing for your general studies. Don't overcomplicate things. Okay, with this, we wrap up today's class. Of course, there are many questions left. I'll come back to those questions tomorrow. Okay, we'll meet tomorrow as well. Good luck.